Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. This video is brought to you by First Detachment Nutrition. Battle tested, expert formulated. Use discount code AB10 at checkout for 10% off. All right, folks, Big Paul here today with another Anabolic Q&A. We have some great questions lined up today. We have, can women handle more volume than men? How to tell your girlfriend you take steroids, and why is every bodybuilder taking telmisartan for blood pressure? There's a lot more questions. We're going to get into all those in just 1 second. All right, first question here is from Breck Amy 417. Amy asks, what are your thoughts on German volume training style for legs in a surplus in the off season? Thank you. I don't know that anybody really does German volume training anymore. That style of training is kind of antiquated at this point. There are higher volume styles of training. RP style of training is one that I see a lot of people using now. That one was created by Dr. Mike Israetel. There are studies showing that women can handle more volume and recover from workouts quicker than men. Women have been shown to have more mitochondria and capillary density than men. Estrogen seems to also help with recovery. Women have a really good ability to recover from workouts, tend to handle more volume. So you could probably throw more volume at it than a guy. What I would suggest is sort of figure out where your volume landmarks are. What is your minimum volume? If you follow any of the Renaissance periodization stuff, you'll know what I'm talking about. And you sort of have to suss out on your own what your maximum recoverable volume is per body part. Usually what I'll do is take a block of training and I will push up the volume over a 5 to 6 week period. And during that time, I will push it until I feel like I am hitting my recovery threshold. And that's my maximum recoverable volume. And I try to keep my training somewhere in that window of minimum effective volume and then maximum recoverable volume. All right, folks, I want to take a quick break from this episode to tell you about the new e-course that Kurt Havens and I have put together, the scientific principles of anabolics and PEDs. This is the most comprehensive PED e-course ever put together with over 80 modules, including intros to PEDs, major steroid profiles, competitor off-season cycles, non-competitor cycles, contest prep cycles, HGH fundamentals, insulin fundamentals, side effect management, safer use concepts, fat loss agents, estrogen management, and advanced PED and hypertrophy science. It is the best course out there of its kind. Go check it out. Link is in the video description below. All right, next question is Bradford Bertoli 2829. Hey, Big Paul, when stacked with test, which will make you grow faster, insulin or IGF-1? The issue with IGF-1, I've never personally used it. From what I understand, LO3 doesn't do a whole lot, or any of these ones that you can get through peptide sites. The only IGF-1 that I understand from talking to people that are in the know in bodybuilding that's worth the salt is Increlex. And Increlex is incredibly expensive and difficult to source. So you probably would be better off using some growth hormone and insulin if you want to raise your IGF-1 levels. That by itself is going to raise your IGF-1 levels. I would also argue, rather than just stacking that with test, maybe put an anabolic on top of your test, something like Masteron or Primobolan or Equipoise. You're probably going to see more results from that. Generally, when I'm working people up or when I work myself up, I would start off with just test first, then add a secondary anabolic, and then my next choice of compound would probably be growth hormone and go from there. And if you're not a competitive bodybuilder, there's probably no use in doing much more than that. That's probably where I would cut things off. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to dabble in these other areas that are more dangerous and potentially have negative health outcomes long term. So I would just stick to the basics and run things that way. M.M405 asks, does metformin lower IGF-1 levels? Personally, I have seen no lowering of IGF-1 levels in my blood work when running metformin. I talked to Vigorous Steve, and he said that his were buried when he ran metformin. It just depends, I guess, on how you respond. Mine were almost 500 on metformin. There is a meta-study recently, and in the result of that meta-study, you can look it up on metformin use and IGF-1 levels. There's a meta-study that I think took like 50 or 60 studies on metformin. And what it found overall, that there was a significant decline in IGF-1 following metformin intake. However, a significant degree of heterogeneity was observed amongst the studies attributable to intervention during and study population. In the subgroup analysis, children intervention less than 12 weeks yielded a significant reduction in IGF-1, whilst paradoxically, the participants greater than 18 years of age, metformin intake significantly increased IGF-1, which is odd. So in summary, what they found is that, it was greater than 12 weeks for the children. So it was greater than 12 weeks. So what it found is that in young populations, that IGF-1 was decreased. In healthy adults, 18 years or older, that it significantly increased IGF-1, which is which they said was a paradox. They're not sure why. And if you look at the study, they said it warrants more research. I also have seen other studies where in people that are metabolically impaired and over a certain age, people that are over 50, I don't recall the exact numbers, that also there was reduction in IGF-1. So it seems that in healthy adults, that it doesn't have that effect. You also have to consider if you're running a crap ton of insulin, GH, and other compounds, it's probably like pissing on a forest fire. It's not going to significantly reduce IGF-1. Now, I would ask, why do you need metformin? I used to use it periodically. I haven't in the last year and a half or so, mainly because it causes gut distress and it completely nukes my appetite. I don't want to eat when I take metformin. I will occasionally use it on contest prep for the appetite suppressing properties. And even if it does reduce IGF-1 during a contest prep, it's not like we're going to be growing in a calorie deficit anyway. So it's sort of a moot point at that time anyhow. Cowards die twice. Ask a Tren question. He said, Tren and test worked very well for me the first time. What about test and primo combo for my next cycle? I'm not stepping on stage. I'm 42 years old and just trying to stay strong. I just want to be lean, and that's all I wish to be. Well, if you're not going to step on stage and you're trying to maintain your health, why in the world would you use Tren? Tren is the flamethrower of PEDs. It's the fusion bomb, the nuclear bomb of all PEDs. I really am not a big fan of using Tren outside of contest prep, and I use it in very limited doses for limited durations. Eventually, it will catch up with you, and you start to feel like crap. You're going to have spin the dial of side effects. You have the wheel. You're going to end up with something. You're going to end up with insomnia. You're going to end up with erectile dysfunction. Your mood's going to be off. Your blood pressure is going to be through the roof. You're going to have kidney stress. Something's going to happen. I promise you. You can't run Tren for extended durations of time without some sort of problems. I hear guys say they run Tren and have no issues. I don't know. I have a hard time believing it. Maybe there are some genetic outliers that are tolerant of Tren and have no side effects, but I also think guys tend to lie to themselves to justify what they're taking. So my advice would be, if you're just a guy who wants to be in shape, use a reasonable diet. Make sure that you're in a slight calorie deficit if you want to stay lean, or at least at isocaloric state. Eat healthy. Diet's going to be the most important part. Do cardio. And just take basic anabolic stuff that's safe. Probably test Primo, GH, test Masteron, GH, something like that. All right, next question is about estrogen. This person, it's just a generic username, ask, I feel normal and fine on a 16 estradiol. Do you think my low E2 is hindering my gains? Should I even increase my E2 during the off season? There is this weird obsession now with running your estrogen as high as possible. It's funny how things have changed over the last 20 years. I remember in the early 2000s, it was crush estrogen. Now it's let it get as high as you possibly can. Let it run wild. There is a sweet spot for estrogen. 16 estradiol is within the normal range. If I remember right, for men, it's somewhere between 10 and 50. It's probably on the low end. I like mine to run on the high end, or maybe just slightly above normal. But I would go by how you feel and what your blood work looks like. If your lipids look good, if you feel good, if your joints are fine, you don't feel lethargic and tired, then I would just rock on with it. I wouldn't try to raise my estrogen artificially. Now, I will tell you this. What I have seen is the guys that tend to run lower estradiol are the guys that are naturally lean. I'm not a fan of D-ball, but those guys are the people that tend to respond better to D-ball. It's like 1 out of 10 people. D-ball is terrible for 9 out of 10. And that 1 person out of 10, it seems to work well for. And it's those people that tend to be naturally lean and have low estradiol. I would be willing to bet, and maybe I'm wrong about this, that if you have that low of estradiol, that you're probably somebody who's naturally lean. Somebody that's 10% body fat or lower, just naturally. That's your homeostatic point. All right, next question is from CGNL Evolved. Would it be better to just eat a trash meal or skip a meal in a pinch? Well, I don't think there's any excuse to ever just eat a trash meal. You can always find something to eat wherever you go. So, for example, if you get stuck out with friends and your fast food is the only option, there are things you can do at a fast food restaurant. Almost every fast food restaurant has a grilled chicken sandwich or even a hamburger. Just get the hamburger plain. There are options that you can go lower fat, lower calorie, even when you're stuck out. It's not an excuse to eat donuts and ham or pizza. Now, I would personally, for me, I would rather somebody just skip that meal than just eat a bunch of ice cream and donuts. There's always meat, though. You can always find meat just about any situation that you're in. Just eat meat if it comes down to it. I think, get the hamburger, throw the bun in the trash, or you can even eat the bun if you leave off all the mayo and cheese and all that stuff. Or even a little bit of cheese is probably not going to kill you. I'll go to McDonald's frequently, and what I'll do when I go to McDonald's or even go out to eat for the burger, I'll have them hold the cheese sometimes on the burger, or I'll just have them skip the mayo. A burger with cheese in the bun is really not that bad. It's better than hammering a bunch of pizza and ice cream and other trash. So there are options. Don't feel like you have to eat trash. There are options to eat clean in almost every situation. The Bull 8719 asks, what are the dosing schedules for semaglutide Ozempic? According to their website, when you look at it, the starting dose for Ozempic is 0.25 milligrams injected once a week for the first 4 weeks. Then your dose is moved up to 0.5 milligram once a week. And after that, the dose may be increased every 4 weeks for up to 2 milligrams once weekly, depending on how you respond to the medication. That's exactly what it says on the website. Now, from what I've heard from people, once they get past 1 milligram, that there is some severe digestive issues. I would just gauge it by how your body responds. I would also question why you even need Ozempic or semaglutide when you're cutting. It doesn't burn fat directly. All it is going to do is act as an appetite suppressant. If you're able to control your appetite on your own without it, I would just go that route. Less drugs are better in these situations. If you're a person that struggles with hunger hormone signaling, you're severely obese, and you just can't control yourself, and you find yourself face first in the pantry at 2 a.m., then maybe something like that could be a tool to use. But if you're able to control yourself and tell yourself no, I would just skip it. Seaball Getball 937 asks, what is the obsession with telmisartan? Why don't bodybuilders use things like lisinopril or amlodipine? That's a good question. There are some gurus out there that have, some safer use gurus that have promoted the use of telmisartan over the last 4 or 5 years. It's not to say that telmisartan isn't a perfectly viable treatment for blood pressure, but there are other options. Something like lisinopril is an ACE inhibitor, which is going to address the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. just in a different manner than something like a ARB would, which is what telmisartan is. They are different. Amlodipine is a calcium channel blocker. It works through a completely different methodology. It blocks the calcium channel, relaxing smooth muscle tissue. I found that amlodipine has a negative effect on being able to lift weights. I tend to notice that I get weaker when I'm using a calcium channel blocker, and it doesn't really provide that much of a benefit for my blood pressure. I have a video up, it was up last week if you want to check it out, about the different medications and what does what and which treat different pathways. There are many different pathways that cause high blood pressure, so you want to make sure that you're addressing the underlying cause of the high blood pressure first. So if it's water retention, maybe take a look at what's causing the additional water retention and just reduce that and keep the side effects away without having to use a drug. If you find that that does not work, I am hypertensive without using PEDs, so I need a blood pressure medicine to help control water retention. I've always had issues with that. I work with a medical doctor. I would suggest talking to a doctor and make sure that you use the appropriate medication to treat the high blood pressure rather than treating yourself. I know a lot of bodybuilders are hesitant to go to doctors because you're going to get the lecture about PED use. But I have found that most doctors are more than willing to prescribe you the appropriate blood pressure medicine to treat your blood pressure in the manner that's necessary. And it's not to say that you need telmisartan. There's no special thing about telmisartan over some other blood pressure medicine. It is a tool, and there is an appropriate tool for the right job. So pick the tool that would be the right choice to get the job done. And in some situations, that is telmisartan. I use an ARB because ACE inhibitors give me dry cough really bad. Nothing more than that. I've worked with my doctor, and I've told my doctor that it makes me get the dry cough really bad. So we switched to an ARB, which works better for me. It may not for you. So I would work with a medical professional, make sure that you have the appropriate treatment plan for your high blood pressure, and then address the underlying causes. Maybe it's high estrogen. Maybe you're retaining water from having too much estrogen. Maybe you're using too much gear. Maybe you're using the wrong type of gear. Maybe you need to adjust that and treat the underlying cause of the high blood pressure. Maybe your diet sucks. Maybe you need to do some cardio. Those are some other areas that you can address before self-prescribing medication. And I would just work with a doctor and make sure that you're treating it properly. All right, and last but not least, we have Thomas Scheipel, 4982, I think that's what it was. He asked, how do you tell your girlfriend that you take steroids? Oh boy, this is a touchy one. I have heard of many breakups and many horror stories over this one before. Of course, I've told the whole world that I take steroids. It's all out on the internet, so there's no secret about what I do. I think you have to make sure you're with somebody you trust. I have heard some crazy stuff where guys have pissed off their girlfriend turns them in, and they get a knock on the door, and all hell breaks loose. You can imagine what happens afterwards. I have also heard of girlfriends using it as leverage over a guy to threaten him. So that's not to say that's normal. Normal people don't do stuff like that. So I would make sure that you're not dating a crazy person first before you tell them. But I think honesty is always the best policy. It's better just to get it out up front. Probably if you find yourself a gym girl, she's going to be more understanding because she's been around it at the gym. If you date another bodybuilder or fitness competitor or whatever. But my wife is not a workout person. She completely understands where I'm at. I was honest and upfront with her about it. Once we established some trust, I just told her, and she seems to get it. And I tell her that it's a part of my life. It's part of my identity. It makes me feel whole as a person. It's part of what I do. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do recreational drugs. I take PEDs to help me perform in bodybuilding. It's part of my hobby, part of my passion with improving and enhancing my body. So she understands that part of it. I know sometimes it can be a problem with some guys. Some guys get out of control with it. Some guys can be dicks to their girlfriend. Some guys can get really nasty when they're on stuff. So that can create a problem. You have to ask yourself if you're in a position to be a good partner to somebody before you tell them about it. So if you're that person, maybe it's not time to take on a girlfriend. But I think ultimately you should just be honest about it. All right, folks, that's all I got for you on this one. Hopefully you found it helpful. Please leave your comments in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.